Hello, and welcome to the Ohio Individual Service Plan, or Ohio ISP Overview Training. My name is James Bennett, and I am a Regional Support Facilitator with the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. This is part one of a two-part training. Part one will serve as a brief overview of the exciting new Ohio ISP project. The presenters in part two will expand upon this information. Before we begin, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to Director Davis and everyone involved in this process for their time and commitment to help make this a reality. As mentioned, there will be two parts to this training. You must complete part one before you are able to advance to part two. The takeaways for today's part one training include why the change to a single assessment and plan was necessary, and key principles and concepts that are part of the new Ohio ISP. For part two, the presenters will share information related to the Ohio ISP interface and IT platform and anticipated rollout dates for training and implementation. Before moving forward, it is important to take a moment to review how the process has worked to date. As Carl Sagan once said, you have to know the past to understand the present. Our system includes 88 different counties and over 400 ICFs, leading to a lack of standardization. ICF stands for Intermediate Care Facility, which is a licensed residential setting option of 4 or more individuals that offers a package of services, including 24-hour staffing. This training is not just about a single plan, but also about how standardization will bring systemic change. Right now, there are potentially over 500 different ways for plans to look. The current process does not support the person, it supports the system. Repetitive planning tools. There are various inefficiencies due to repetitive processes and planning tools. The process is not streamlined to make efficient use of time, reducing the amount of time available to spend with people who receive services. Compliance concerns. Compliance issues currently exist for a variety of reasons, such as the assessment plan not aligning, the plan not being updated when changes occur, plans not being shared, and feedback from all team members not being taken into consideration. Plan did not follow the person. If a person moved, it often would restart the process and cause some of the history to be lost. County-to-county transfers could be a challenge, even within the same system. Not easily understood. Some plans could be difficult to understand and implement. With no consistency or structure, it could be confusing for a provider working in 2 separate counties or a staff working at 2 separate ICFs to know where or how to find information in the plan. As we all know, especially over the past year, change in life is inevitable. We must continue to adapt to ensure the best possible systems and services for people with disabilities. Throughout this process, several town hall meetings were conducted to understand the hopes and fears that the field had surrounding a single service plan. High-level town hall feedback was gathered. Here you can see a word cloud, with the larger words representing the more frequent responses. Some of the more common hopes expressed by the field include person-centered, simplicity, consistency, easier for providers, easy to understand, reader-friendly, training, rule requirements, less repetition, and easier for individuals. Some of the more common fears expressed by the field include not person-centered, long, frequent changes, IT issues, lack of info, time-consuming, and not applicable to all individuals. It is interesting to note that many of the fears are directly opposite of the hopes. One of the biggest hopes is for the ISP to be person-centered, while one of the biggest fears is that it is not person-centered. People were also asking for simplicity as opposed to a long process. We heard you. The town hall feedback was used to develop the Ohio ISP. So, what are the underlying principles that define why DODD is moving to a standardized assessment and plan? These key principles are driven by Director Davis's core values, which will shape all future work. Kindness and empathy, collaboration, transparency, innovation, quality, inclusiveness, and accountability. Applying these core values, the process should be treated the same for all people in the system, regardless of services or funding, such as waiver or ICF. It is not about existing services, but more about the supports the person needs. Focus on the person, not just the services. Plans and assessments change as the person's life changes. All DD systems utilize the same process. Using these key principles as a foundation, we will briefly review some familiar concepts that are central to this process. Now that we have clarified Director Davis's key principles and explained why standardization was necessary, I will move on to the concepts found in the Ohio ISP that are familiar to you and those that may have changed slightly. As you can see on this slide, the current concepts of team process, person-centered thinking, person-centered practices, and person-centered planning are the framework for the Ohio ISP. First, let's begin with what team process has to offer to Ohio ISP. It is the team that puts person-centered thinking and planning into practice, and this will not change. Teams remain essential to driving the standardized Ohio ISP. The members that remain important to the team process are the person receiving services, the QIDP or SSA, the individual who helps the person write the plan and keeps the team focused. There's also the parent, guardian, advocate, the provider, and other people who are important to the person. Although individual teams may function differently, each team will continue to have the same shared goal: to improve the quality of life for the person. Teams will continue to use creative ways to get information. The presenters in part 2 of this overview will share several new and different creative ways the Ohio ISP process will get information. Everyone on the team continues to have a valuable role to play. Some roles may vary, but all members will continue to work together to help the person stay focused on the Ohio ISP. Finally, we want to acknowledge that the team will not find the Ohio ISP process to be stagnant, but rather a smooth and ongoing planning commitment made by the team to the person. In the same way that the team process remains important, so too does the team's person-centered thinking. Moving to the Ohio ISP does not mean adopting system-centered practices. Despite being a standardized process, person-centered thinking has been embedded in the Ohio ISP tools and processes to help the team. During part 2, you will see the presence of person-centered thinking in a number of ways. The Ohio ISP process, assessment, and plan continue to prompt the entire team to discover what the person finds important and respectfully address significant issues in the person's life, focus on the opportunities the person wants out of life, and to listen carefully while helping people make their own choices about services and outcomes. Likewise, person-centered practices are still essential. Ohio remains committed to person-centered practices in all areas of service delivery. The Ohio ISP is a standardized person-centered approach that continues to encourage the team to focus on the person during assessment and planning. During part 2 of this presentation, you will see how the Ohio ISP will look at services and supports in the context of what the person wants, what matters to the person, what it takes to support the person's health and safety needs, and how to best create experiences that help the person have the life they want. It is likely that anyone who has been a part of this field for a period of time has heard of the 7 essential elements of person-centered planning at some point. The development of the Ohio ISP has resulted in a change to what are now known as the 6 essential elements. First, what essential elements have not changed? Elements 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all current elements that remain a part of person-centered planning. These are respectful and empowering, makes connections throughout the plan, detailed and thorough, clear outcomes and experiences, and clear description of services and supports. What has changed? 2 elements that were previously listed as essential will no longer be seen as separate elements only because they have been braided throughout the Ohio ISP. The first element is that of focuses on the positive. This has been removed from the essential elements because it is woven throughout person-centeredness. The other element is Medicaid-funded services. This is found throughout Ohio ISP and will be automatically populated in the online tool. The new element is that listed as number 2, trauma-responsive approach. Over the past several years, the impact of trauma has become a significant focus for DoDD. Adding trauma sensitivity as an essential element of person-centered planning highlights the importance of trauma in the life of a person and in the way services need to be delivered. For those not familiar with a trauma-informed and responsive approach, I am going to take a few moments to provide a brief overview of the subject. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, developed the 3 E's in their concept of trauma. According to SAMHSA, individual trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. The focus on events places the cause of trauma in the environment, not in some defect of the individual. This is what underlies the basic credo of trauma-informed approaches. It's not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. Events can be a single event, a series of events, and/or chronic conditions. People may experience it directly, witness it, or feel threatened hearing about an event that affects someone they know. The focus on experience highlights the fact that not every child or adult will experience the same events as traumatic. The identification of a broad range of potential effects reminds us that our response must be holistic. It's not enough to focus on symptoms or behaviors. Our goal is to support a child to learn and grow, or an adult to live a satisfying life. A trauma-informed approach incorporates important trauma principles into the organizational culture. SAMHSA developed 4 key assumptions for a trauma-informed approach. These 4 R's include realize, recognize, respond, and resist re-traumatization. According to SAMHSA, a program, organization, or system that is trauma-informed realizes the widespread impact of trauma and understands potential paths for recovery, recognizes the signs and symptoms of trauma in clients, families, staff, and others involved with the system, and responds by fully integrating knowledge about trauma into policies, procedures, and practices, and seeks to actively resist re-traumatization. DODD is confident that adding a trauma-informed and responsive approach will enrich the person's quality of services, calm the environment in which services are delivered, and, more importantly, improve the overall quality of life for the person while at home, at work, and in their neighborhood. We at DODD appreciate your time and attention during this part of the high-level overview of the Ohio Individual Service Plan. In a short amount of time, we have attempted to share with you why DODD has moved to the Ohio ISP, Director Davis's key principles, and the familiar person-centered practices and approaches that remain an essential part of how we support the person. We hope that you plan to continue the high-level overview by signing up for Part 2. Thanks for watching.